So now that I've decided I'm going to 9-box on the Teek TLP, the next thing to do is show you what my 9-box class selection is. These 9 classes are not the most optimized for DPS classes, nor the most optimized classes period, but they are the 9 classes that I will play for my 9-box. That also means that if I pick number 1, 2, and 3, that is not the best 3-box combo. The list that I'm about to make is the importance or value that I give to each class for having a 9-box. That means I'm absolutely 9-boxing. Here's my 9 classes I'm picking. And then later in this video, I will show you what my 13-box will turn into. So starting with number 1, obviously we're going to take a tank. Now I pick Paladin. When I first started playing Everquest, my main was a warrior. I played into Planes of Power, probably out actually into Elements of War on the live servers. I think that was into 2005, as a raid tank warrior. And I love the warrior. However, for some reason, I decided to play a Paladin on Mischief, thinking that it would be kind of cool like a World of Warcraft Paladin. So let's just be clear here, Paladins are absolutely god-awful compared to other tanks for holding single target aggro. Yes, they do have stun, and yes, you can chain cast stun, but they also lack a lot of DPS, which also helps hold threat. And when you compare them to, say, the Shadow Knight, or even a warrior, once it gets going, they're just subpar tanks for a little bit of time. And I think maybe around Depths of Dark Hollow, when I was playing, that Paladins kind of maybe sort of equalized with some of the other tanks. But the reason that I am choosing Paladin is because of Resurrect and Group Heal. Now on the warrior, I had Area Taunt and some other things that I could hold aggro and some really fast ways to switch targets and try to proc my weapons or taunt stuff back to me. However, I've noticed with a Paladin, especially since I do mostly group content and not raid content, the Paladin is just so much superior. Its group heals act like little area of effect taunts, and stuns are really awesome for holding aggro when you're not stunned or getting the shit kicked out of you by a raid boss. And if you do mess up, you have the option to, maybe your cleric dies, you can res your cleric, and it really has saved me on corpse runs. It saved me on other classes in my group dying, especially when I do those massive AE power leveling pulls. 1 group heal and they're all on the Paladin. There's other bonuses too, you get the Divine Barriers or the Divine Aura type spell line, and obviously HP buffs. But even though they're low DPS and not considered the greatest single target tank, Paladin is pretty much going to be a staple for every group I make. If I were to do maybe just a 6-box and I was going to try 1 group in raid content, obviously I would need a warrior for that. The most valued class in my 9-box setup is going to be Paladin. So the second class that I'm going to take for my 9-box is a Druid. Now Druids, like the Paladin, are also mainly useless, especially early on. Yeah, they can heal and they can do damage and they have some buffs, but honestly, compared to the classes that excel in just those things, they are completely fucking useless. I always boxed a Druid. Back in the live servers, there was always a Druid in my group. I power level with a Druid. So this Druid here is kind of grandfathered in, and it always will be. I absolutely, especially early on, hate running from place to place, even with Bard speed, and the Druid ports are just fantastic. The backup heals are just fantastic, but I mainly enjoy the damage shields because that's how I power level the rest of my classes later on. And you could do a wizard here for ports and a little extra damage, but no, it's Druid pretty much all the way. The second most valuable class in my 9-box selection. And even if I had a 6-box, I would probably find a way to sneak a Druid in, even though it is not optimal for just about anything. Their mana efficiency on healing is absolutely horrible to start, and I guess later on they turn into pretty decent healers. They'll probably fix some stuff. Maybe they do some damage, but even with best in slot items up to Depths of Dark Hollow on Mischief, the Druid was always lacking in certain areas, but it is number 2. And moving on to number 3 is the mandatory Bard. Bards are absolutely necessary, especially early on for the group resists, group buffs, but mainly run speed. So now that I've used the Druid to port somewhere, absolutely not going to be running with Spear of the Wolf or anything like that. Use the Druid to evac sometimes at the safe spots in a good location, but we're bard speeding across this whole fucking map. So that is one of the most important classes to have. And additionally, when I'm power leveling, and the bards in the group, they have a little bit of a damage shield that they can play with the Druid's damage shield, which helps the power leveling out quite a bit. And the fourth pick is going to be an enchanter. Early on, up to Planes of Power, Gates of Discord, enchanters can use their charm DPS and be one of the lead DPS. However, I also like the crowd control and the haste and the mana buffs. So combined with the bard, my group is usually pretty buffed up. And one thing you'll start to notice is that I absolutely do not want to go without buffs, and I absolutely like to have a self-sufficient way to have the best buffs in the game on my group at all times. So I'm not going to be waiting in, the plane of knowledge to get Master Group Enchanter buff or anything like that. I'm going to log my ass on and just buff myself. But early on, the Enchanter is actually really, really good DPS. And number 5, of course, is Cleric. I used to try to run without the Cleric because I have the Druid in there. And, I would try to heal with the Druid, but it'd either be out of mana or not heal fast enough. And just having the Cleric buffs, the Cleric heals, the Cleric mana efficiency, which is absolutely insane when compared to a Druid, even with best gear for a while. You just need a Cleric. It's just the resurrections. I mean, with the Paladin and Cleric in a group, the Paladin could die or the Cleric could die, and you still have a chance to finish off and revive your group without having to do a corpse run.
I see dead people.
I hate corpse runs. I am from the old Everquest. I've spent the 9-10 hours trying to get bodies back. I've had to let corpses rot when they used to rot and all my gear was gone. Absolutely hate it. It interferes with your leveling flow, and it's just not good. So Cleric, number 5. And number 6, Shaman. You probably saw this one coming. This is kind of how I used to try to go without a Cleric, because I would have, either a Warrior or Paladin, then Druid and Shaman. I got 2 healers there, I'm thinking, and a slow, so I'll be fine, right? Well, something bad happens and somebody dies. If it's the tank and it's a Paladin, you no longer have any resurrection. But the Shaman, just for its melee buffs and other buffs, and its slow, is just one of the superior classes again that you're going to have in your group. And as you can see right there, I'm getting all the buffs that I need. So even if I were to take 3 classes out of the group and just make like a 6-box group, I'm going to have all my buffs. And number 7, yes, we have to add some damage to this setup. So like I said, you may not see those first 6 classes all in the group at the same time because that's really inefficient, but you will see at least one monk in that group, and then I kind of rotate 9 classes through one group as I play. So the monk is going to be in the group pretty much at all times until it's max level and can do something maybe on the outside of the group. And then the 8th pick is also a monk. Monks are the best damage that you can get for quite a while. They're also, when you start off on a new server, they can use their fists for damage, so they don't necessarily need all the gear. Kind of similar to how mage pets don't need all the gear right away, so if you're poor, this is a good option. Where other classes may rely on weapons and gearing, you can kind of get away with a little bit of DPS, fisting things, as they say, with the monk. Inside just a basic 6-box setup, you're usually going to have 2 monks for quite some while. If somebody's only playing 6 and they're doing the single target raid bosses, you kind of have monk because you normally have a shaman and a bard and a lot of melee buffs in there and resists. And the 9th class, warrior. This may seem odd, but the warrior is actually who will swap in to main tank some of the raid bosses I like to do with my 9-box, just for defensive and being an all-around better single target tank. One of the classes where you don't have to keep chain casting stuff to hold aggro, because the aggro usually comes in threat off their weapons, and they do a pretty decent amount of damage. This also gives me the ability to have 2 tanks, and I can probably set up, my main 6-box group, farming one thing or experiencing one spot, then I can take 3 other characters with a tank and a healer somewhere else, and I can farm some minor items or do something else with those 3, or I can have them all in one area and just kind of rotate them and destroy things. But this is my 9-box setup. This will be my 9-box setup. It's pretty standard. You could obviously swap Paladin and Shadow Knight. You could throw a Wizard there instead of Druid. I mean, there's ways to do things, but this has been the most efficient way that I've played the game. It was actually on Mischief that this developed into what I consider my standard 9-box. I can never play just 6 because I always feel like I'm missing like some buffs, or I need like a character to run around. Maybe I'll take the druid outside a group and just pour around and grab items from the bazaar, things like that. So that's my 9-box selection that I'll be playing on Teek. Now, how does that happen? Like, what is the actual progression for this? So this is phase 1, and I cannot remember for some reason whether or not humans can play druids right away. I know that I don't think they used to be able to. However, this is phase 1, so if I am able to make a human druid, I will do so, but all of those classes right there will be humans, so they're in the same starting area. So I will first create a paladin, druid if I can, bard, monk, enchanter, cleric. If I can't create that druid, then I'll probably make another monk. I will take that 6-box group and I will level near Freeport, somewhere close-ish by, maybe to 10, 15, probably level 20. And at level 20, what I'll be able to do is start running out and collecting up the other classes, because the shaman's gonna be a barbarian, and I know there's evil classes that are maybe closer that I can play that could be shamans, but I usually make a barbarian shaman just to stay neutral or on the good side. Don't really play a lot of the evil stuff. Closest I come is Shadow Knight, but I usually just make a human Shadow Knight. And that run from Kanos through Blackburrow, and then just trying to get through High Pass to get over to the other classes, it may work on a new TLP. Once people are starting to level in those areas, I could probably get through, but it does take a lot of time to run really slow, and if you die, that corpse run is just insane. So I usually try to get this first 6 up, and then what I'll do is maybe start getting some druid ports near 30, or use the druid to get out there with single ports, and just try to get those classes across somehow. But what will most likely happen is I'll play these 6, level them up, and then move these characters toward the other characters, and then I'll help power level where I make the barbarian, shaman, and warrior together, so they have a decent little combo, especially when you have a little higher level druid and some of these classes get over there. Probably level those in the Blackburrow, Everfrost area just to get started, and then once everybody is able to travel freely and they're high enough level, then they'll come together. You can see phase 2 is literally I'm going to create a shaman and warrior in Hallis, and I'm going to try to level them over there only after I get the druid and everybody else leveled up high enough to travel to them, so that I can kind of power level them. And I threw the monk down here as an option because you're not going to make a barbarian monk, but the monk is dependent on whether or not you can make a druid, a human druid. And if I can make a human druid, then the monk will come at a later time after I get the shaman and warrior caught up to the rest of the phase 1 group. Power leveling that monk is going to be relatively easy with the higher level druid and all the shaman buffs and stuff like that, so it will catch up. And I'll just use the level range thing, where if it gets within a level range, I'll throw it in the group. But I kind of rotate the 9 out, keep them pretty even as I can, and that's how I'm going to do it on this server. Just in case you're wondering how I'm going to actually get these 9 classes together and what I'm going to do first. And if we were going to expand to a 13-box selection, which is very likely, because some of the raid bosses and stuff that I like to farm are just better with 2 groups, and sometimes having two full groups is really good for farming items. You can do the same DZs twice if you can get it down with 1 group. Now, where I will lack, obviously, is the paladin trying to tank one of the DZs, but that could be solved by making a warrior on the paladin account and just passing gear from the warrior across, since it's all tradable loot. However, number 10 into the 13-box class selection is a bard. Bards are mandatory, 1 per group, pretty much for quite a while, even when they have buffs that hit across raids. It's just good to have a bard in each group. And then obviously the number 11, I have to add another cleric, because you need 2 clerics for a lot of the raids that I do. And if you're not doing 2 group raids, you still need a cleric in each group to do the 1 group raids, if you get good enough to do that. And when you're talking about Teek, you're going to have pretty much near best in slot gear for pretty cheap. There's going to be a lot of gear. It's going to be tradable. So a lot of these lesser raid bosses will be 1 groupable, and you'll be able to tell which ones are 1 groupable because you'll see them show up in the messages, the server-wide messages, frequently. You'll just see just a repeat of people killing certain bosses. That's how you know that they're probably 1 grouping them and farming that loot. And then number 12 is another monk, and then Number 13, I used to just put more DPS in here. Wizards are kind of okay DPS depending on how long the fight goes, but I noticed that when have 13 characters there, that the AE teleport is just absolute. I'm just so lazy. It's so great. Even I'll take a less DPS class just to have that AE teleport, and then I bind everybody in the same spot. It is kind of a pain in the ass if I were to just have a druid and no wizard, because there is 13 characters that need to go somewhere. So normally I'll translocate one of them, and then I will port the other two groups using the wizards and the druid, and then once they get into a zone or similar zone, I'll evac so that they're both in the same spot. But that's what my 13 box will normally turn into. And then from that point on, it's basically, if you're going to make a third group or an 18 box, you're going to have, depending on what you're doing, if you're going to be doing a bunch of one group raid bosses, you'll have another warrior, but your second group will also have probably a cleric and a bard in it, and maybe another tank. Those are pretty much staples, and then you're just going to start filling with DPS at that point. That is my plan. Those are my 9 classes that I will pick and why, and this is my 13 classes that I will end up probably expanding to if I get into the game and why. And no, they're not optimized for DPS or efficiency or anything like that, but I do have all the buffs. It's very convenient. It's very safe. I have a lot of backup plans, a lot of backup strategies. I got a lot of ports, got a lot of travel, got a lot of resurrection. I have, like I said, all the buffs. And as you know, I absolutely hate the traveling system. I put a video out, which you can watch here, about fixes in the traveling system, which was not too well received. A lot of people do like the time sinks and the way the traveling system is set up, but feel free to check it out.